Well, I grew up in a place called the San Fernando Valley, California, in Southern California, just outside Los Angeles. And a lot of people don't know the San Fernando Valley is the pornography production capital of the world. It always has been and is to this day. More pornography comes out of that place than any other place on earth. So when I was about 14 years of age, I was introduced to pornography by some friends. And I was hooked from the very first exposure. The first time I saw it, I had an immense reaction, and I was pulled in immediately. And what I found through my teenage years is that it really was a place for me to escape to feel instant pleasure, to feel escape, to deal with the trauma. I had a pretty tumultuous family life, pretty rough growing up years, and it quickly became my drug of choice. And it was a place to go and to feel something positive, even though temporary, to fill the hole in the soul, as it were. So it was I stayed away from alcohol and drugs and all the other things my friends were doing, but for some reason that pornography was just instant for me. After my addiction came back, into my marriage, I, of course, was scared to death to tell my wife. I didn't want her to know under any circumstances. And the reason I didn't want her to know is because I didn't want her to be disappointed in me. I mean, here was this woman who had married, her knight in shining armor, so to speak, and the last thing in the world you want to do is disappoint someone who looks at you that way. I wanted to be her hero. And yet here I was engaged in this behavior that was betraying her, that was disrespectful in my mind to women. And the last thing I wanted to do was let her know about that, because I thought, you know what, if she finds out the truth about this addiction, she could never love me. If she knows who I really am, it's over. My marriage is over, my relationship is over, and I was petrified. And so I went to great lengths to keep it a secret, to go through all sorts of rituals and so forth to make sure that she wouldn't find out. And that, through all the years that I struggled with it, that was the case. Until I finally got to the place through research and working with other professionals where I could gain the confidence and the understanding about my addiction, and she gained the understanding about how it works, that it wasn't about her, that no matter how responsive she had been or attractive she had been, that wouldn't have pulled me out of my addiction, because it wasn't about the physical intimacy in our marriage or about what she looked like. It was about my own self-medication and drug of choice. So as we learned all about that, I got to the place where I could tell her, and I could be honest and open. And we were able to come together as a partnership to get through this. And boy, when you team up with someone else to help you through this, it makes all the difference in the world. But for years, I went it alone because I was so afraid of what others would think of me if they found out the truth. It was just too shameful. In fact, I often tell people, addicts who are caught up in pornography or other sexual addictions, they would rather die than disclose. And I really felt that way. I would rather face death than have those I cared about find out. I had tried so hard. I just put forth a mammoth effort, and then I would fail anyway. And it just makes an individual feel so worthless and discouraged. What's wrong with me? I must be the weakest person on earth, because everyone keeps telling me, you're just not trying hard enough. If you really wanted to overcome this, you would. And I knew I really wanted to overcome this. I did, desperately. And yet I would keep falling back into it. And what I've discovered over all of my years of research, and working with my psychologist colleagues, is that what happens is you really develop two things. One is what we call the control and release phase. And so when you're in the control phase, and think of it as two circles. So the control phase is a circle, and if I'm winding around in the control phase, I'm trying to do everything right. I'm trying to be the perfect father, the perfect husband, the perfect religious person. I'm trying to do great in my job, trying to behave perfectly. I'm trying to be approved by everyone. I want to be the perfect man. And I'm trying desperately to do that. I'm trying to control my life. And you just spin around in that control circle, and that's a very difficult thing to keep up. It's really hard to keep doing that, right? And you finally get to the point where you're wound so tight that you're going to explode unless you have some kind of a release. And so finally in the control phase, you get to the place where you've just you can't keep it up anymore. So you go over to the release phase, and that's where you indulge in your addiction. That's where you look at pornography to escape all this pressure that you've built up, these unreasonable expectations of yourself, this enormous exertion of willpower. And you self-medicate with the pornography. It's like, oh, finally I don't have to keep that all up. I finally can just relax. And so you escape over to the release phase, and you stay there for a while, which could be for hours or days or even weeks. But then you start to feel guilty and shameful, and your life is out of control and unmanageable. And finally you say, you know what? God, all right, that's it. I'm never going to look at that again. I'm done with that. And I'm going to control everything now. And so you go right back over to the control phase, and you start that all over again.